Welcome to the In Cobb We Trust podcast. And today, special guest, House District 97 member of the Georgia Legislature, Ruwa Romman. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And it's not only that, you're not just a House Legislature member. You're also the co-host of the What's on Fire podcast with your co-host, Josh McLaurin,
Candidate
for Lieutenant Governor.
Yep.
Welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And we were chatting right now off screen about kind of how you got into this, but I wanted to give you a chance to let people know, like, kind of where you grew up, like a little bit about you, and then we'll talk about your organizing.
Yeah, so I was born in Jordan, and my family and I moved here when I was 8.
Okay.
I always wonder if it's like 7 or 8, and then I remember August is after my June birthday, so it was 8. And we've been in Georgia almost all my life. The only time I ever left was for 3 years for grad school. I grew up in Forsyth County, so I graduated from South Forsyth High School, same high school as Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I find deeply funny. Honestly, I tell people all the time that is the promise and the spectrum of Georgia. And
MTG.
And I went to Oglethorpe University, so the castle on Peachtree. And afterwards, I was actually working. The first job I ever had was the Center for Civil and Human Rights. And then during the first Trump administration, I worked for CARE Georgia as comms director. And from there, I went and got my master's in public policy from Georgetown. And that's when I was gone for 3 years and then came back.
Okay.
But I have been doing organizing off and on for over 10 years in the state. The first campaign I ever really sort of got to understand what politics was in terms of door knocking. Like, I'd done a lot of interfaith and, service projects and things like that. But the first real political thing I did was the Jason Carter, Michelle Nunn campaigns. They did like a co-organized type thing. And they had someone come to campus and said, "Hey, do y'all want to be politically engaged?" And me and my friends kind of looked at them and said, "I don't know what that means." This was like back when you would door knock on, you wrote everything down on paper and someone had to upload it. And when you do phone banks, it was a bunch of phones on a table and you all sat together and phone banked. And way back. But I remember very clearly going back to headquarters and thinking, we can turn Georgia blue. And everybody kind of looked at me like, bless your heart, this is Atlanta. You're just targeted at specific doors. But for me, the idea was that why can't we change the state a door at a time? Why can't we change the state a conversation at a time? And that kind of became my obsession. And this was also around the time where, you had folks like Stacey Abrams and my friend Aisha Yaqub and others who were working on not just turning out the current electorate, but also changing the electorate and making sure that everybody in our state was making their voice heard. And so that was sort of the time that I grew up in this idea that just because things are the way that they are doesn't mean that's how they need to be forever.
And it's been a era of transition, I feel, right? Going from pretty ruby red to purplish, blue, depending on where you are, right? And this is your third term.
Second term, third session.
Second term, third session, excuse me. What have you learned?
So much. I think a lot has been reinforced for me. So this year or last year during my campaign was the first time the governor endorsed against me. They spent $250,000 in my district.
For real?
Oh yeah. And we did like 2 points better. So I guess thank you. And so I learned that, and I think we had this reinforced recently in New York City with Zohran Mamdani's win, which is that nothing is inevitable, right? Nothing is inevitable. And I think we really do underestimate voters. Especially in an age of politics where money has sort of reigned supreme. I think we've lost sight of what it means to really fight for every voter and really do that persuasion. In terms of session and working and collaborating with Republicans, this is something I've known because I grew up in Forsyth County. The people I work best with are my rural colleagues because they're the ones that have to deal with the most need. They're the ones that have to deal with the most disinvestment and most disruption. They're the ones who are dealing with sort of a lot of challenges related to healthcare and education, things that all Georgians want to make better.
Even if they're Republican.
Even if they're Republican. And I know that surprises a lot of people, but it's true. I think part of the thing that makes me so angry is, again, just because things are the way that they are does not mean they have to be this way. And that there are actually paths towards something better. And I think sometimes we just need to kind of be a little more open-minded about it because growing up in Forsyth County really taught me that not everybody is what I call militantly hateful, right? That is what they believe. They'll never change. That is the way that it is. some people just truly and sincerely don't know better. And I know in the age of social media and the internet, they should and all of that kind of stuff. But it's true. There's a whole lot to be said about shared realities and everything. And there were a lot of people that really came around, and that just taught me a really valuable lesson.
What is something you've learned? You said it reinforced a lot for you. What did it reinforce?
Just the idea that there are people that are persuadable, that just because we come from very different places doesn't mean we don't have shared challenges that we can actually work on.
So it's actually true. Like you can find common ground even with people that are of the different parties.
And I actually think that's a big part of our job. If you are going to be an elected official, you're an elected official that represents everybody, whether they agree with you or not. And that part is the hardest piece of it, because it's so much contradiction and you're carrying so much tension all the time.
Yes, it is. It's kind of wild for me to hear you say that based on my own impressions of Republicans and how they are outwardly facing. I'm just going to ask the hard questions if that's okay with you. Like, do people give you crap about your hijab? Do people say unkind things like to your face?
So I think this is my conspiracy theory, my funny conspiracy theory, is that the first year I was elected, there was this vibe that everybody was kind of given a talk to behave themselves, is the best way I can describe it.
Is that right?
I don't know. I really that's just my conspiracy theory, out of the way that everybody just behaved, right? Like people went out of their way, physically would walk across the chamber to come say hi to me. Of all the members, because I stick out like a sore thumb, I was sitting in the back. It's not, there was no reason for you to make that journey from the front of the chamber back to me. So clearly, I think there was some sort of, hey, let's not turn this into a thing kind of conversation that happened. I don't have any proof of this, but it's just the way that people have acted. But I am somebody who my theory is that I will always give you a chance. And that's the chance that you get. And either you prove me right or you prove me wrong, but I will always give you a chance. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that I don't argue with them and there isn't tension. So for example, every time they've brought up another anti-trans bill, to be clear, we've passed one housing bill this session and 3 anti-trans bills. And to me, that is just...
why do they keep wanting you punched down?
Because it's great politics for them. I mean, if you go back and watch session, there are actually times where they will say, if you don't vote for this, we're going to put a mailer out about you. And it's just so blatantly just in your face. But the reality is that for most Georgians, the priorities are actually not that. If you ask Georgians, correct, what their number one priority is, it's usually lack of good healthcare access. It's usually sort of being able to pay their bills comfortably, building a future that's great for their kids. But when you look at the amount of hours and minutes that we spend in comparison to what Georgians want versus what we end up doing, another good example of this is the Hurricane Helene recovery. We put a lot of that in the budget, but then we did what's called a CUVA bill. It's sort of around conservation easement and taxes. It's very complicated. Even I barely understand it. But they kept saying, if you vote no on these bills, then you just don't want to help farmers recover from Hurricane Helene. The bill literally impacted a handful of very large, wealthy farms and not actually the smaller farms. In fact, you can still find people that'll say, this is what my business still looks like almost a year after Hurricane Helene. This is what my neighborhood still looks like almost a year after Helene. But they turn around and they say, but look at us, we punched down on trans kids, so yay. And we did help on Hurricane Helene recovery, but who did we help? It's definitely not your average mom and pop farm or family farm or whatever. It's some obscene corporation.
Well, I mean, it just seems like moneyed interests always seem to get the best of everybody. And, it's kind of wild for me to finally have an elected representative other than Gabe Sanchez, right? Really just talk as openly and directly as you do. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of hate. I'm sure you've gotten, even my short time in the spotlight, which I don't particularly enjoy, but felt the need to do it. Do you get threats, and do you how, and you seem to be just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? Somebody had one time asked me, with everything going on and there's a lot as a state rep that I deal with that isn't normal for state representatives. We're part-time. We don't even get paid staff. We get one admin that we share between 8 of us. And so part of the reason that I do so much, like you'll see some state reps do fundraising year round, is actually so I can have one person to help with managing my emails and responses and stuff, because it's not normal for us to get this kind of attention. It's not normal for us to get this kind of traffic and scrutiny. And there was a moment where, there are days where you just kind of think, why am I putting myself in the middle of this? And especially on those darkest days, I kind of have to lean into spite a little bit, like I don't want the opposition to outlast me kind of situation. And sometimes that's it, right? Sometimes you have to remember that the people who made the world the way it is today had been chipping at it and chipping at it and chipping at it relentlessly for decades.
Right.
We have an obligation to do the same.
Right. Absolutely. And you were talking about organizing. You had this really interesting idea about Project 159. Can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I think so. What I'm seeing as a legislator, and something I try to explain to people, is those who show up to session the most are people who are paid to be there. And to be clear, in the state of Georgia, everyone's a lobbyist, whether you're doing it on behalf of a nonprofit that does a really, really great thing, or a corporation as a special interest. It's always the lobbyist, and we rarely see our own constituents down at the Gold Dome during session. And
which is for like 2 months.
3, yeah.
3 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my thinking was, what if we could reach people in all 159 counties that could mobilize during election years, but also during session, be able to email them and say, hey, your state reps are about to do this terrible thing. Make sure they hear from you, regardless of whether or not they're Republican or Democrat. Because what ends up happening is we end up in a bubble that is very different than the public bubble, based on who we're talking to day to day and who is coming and is there in those hallways. So to give you an example, there was a bill that shielded pesticide companies from liability that was rammed through. And originally in the Senate, it passed unanimously because the story we were given was that this was important for farmers to be able to remain whole and sound, and without these pesticide companies and stuff, they would completely go under. But if you read the bill, it's actually a liability shield. It's a shield that says you can't sue these companies for using poisonous chemicals if the EPA didn't deem that chemical poisonous. So what it's doing is it's creating a reality and reinforcing it. So as we're seeing the EPA is being gutted. So if the EPA doesn't say, hey, we don't have enough money to see if this chemical is bad.
Okay.
And we're not going to say this chemical is bad. And so now I can't go sue the company, even if they knew the chemical was bad, right? The standard wasn't set for them. And so it passed unanimously in the Senate, and it comes to the House, and we're sitting there, and it's a Friday. We're supposed to all leave, and suddenly we're going for a recess. It's not sine die, it's not crossover, so there's no reason for us to have a recess on a Friday. We go to the Rules Committee, it comes out, and it's on our floor. And we're all thinking, where did this bill come from? And it passed. And it was one of the most infuriating situations for me, because all I could think about...
It passed.
It passed.
And the governor signed it.
And the governor signed it. It is so nakedly special interest. I mean, so like the Supreme Court ruled against these corporations twice. And now their big push is to try to go to legislators all around the country to set the bar by the EPA, which is so far below any
the bar's
good
in
standard,
hell to borrow
way below hell. And now, for example, if you are a farmer or you work on a farm and you use this pesticide and you become, like we've seen folks become infertile, we've seen folks develop cancer, it's just really horrible. Now it's a lot harder for you to get any kind of compensation for the harm that's been caused to you.
God, Aaron Brockovich must be going just wild.
And they sold it. And to be clear, I had colleagues crying in the well, being like, this is how we protect our family farm. This is how we maintain competition with China. We need this. This is.
Do they actually believe it?
1,000,000%.
So it's
because
not
why
just...
wouldn't you? Because pesticides are important to maintain the health of your crop. So for them, Monsanto came to them and said, or whoever the company was, Bayer, I don't remember exactly which one it was, or maybe like a mix of the two of them, and said, if you guys don't do this, we can no longer offer these products. And so without these products, your farms are going to die, and good luck competing with China. And that's all they told them. And they said, oh, this is not really a liability shield. This is because people are lying in court and getting money out of us and all this other stuff.
So are you
I know, actually, it's messed up.
Are you actually saying that if people call, it makes a difference?
Yeah, especially for state legislators, especially during session. Calling and emailing us. So when we hear from people about a bill, right, enough times, at bare minimum, it forces a conversation.
Okay, I'm just gonna nail down on that.
Please.
Because I think I've been guilty of this. I'm like, what should I call?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't make a difference. So, okay, let's say I call your office. I'm not gonna speak to you. You're doing something else. I'm gonna speak to one of your staffers. Walk me through that phone call until the message gets to you, and then what happens after?
So you probably call us and it probably goes to voicemail. And what we do is we listen to all of our voicemails, usually once a day or once every few days. No, I do. We're state reps. Most people don't have, when I say we mostly don't have staff, I mean that sincerely. This is the level of government. Yeah, this is the level of government that is actually the place where we still have the most influence.
And is that the standard? Like, or other people ignore it?
Most of us don't have staff.
No, but like, do all electeds listen to their voicemail?
Yeah. I mean, they should. I don't know about all my colleagues, but I know at least in the suite that I'm in, people will sit down and clear out their voicemails at least once a week.
Honestly, like,
this is not Congress.
No, I thought there's like a little bit of a barrier between me to you.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, no, you actually listen to it. And then what?
And we'll scan our emails. So when you email us, for example, I can't physically respond to every email immediately. Like, we are trying to get through a backlog right now, actually. But what I tell folks is, even if we are not responding to you directly and immediately, we still have to read through those emails, because that's where HR emails us. That's where we get other important emails about session announcements and things like that. So if we've got 100 people, 50 people, 10 people from our district emailing us about a bill, and it's the subject line, I immediately go, I need to go look into that bill. If nothing else, it flags it for you. And the way I explain to people is, even Congress, right? Even if it is a staffer, they are actually tracking by the numbers both sides of an issue to see which one is calling the most. And the reason that matters is, if they're from your district, if they're your constituents, and then I have organizations coming to meet with me and companies coming to meet with me, and it's like two different sides of the issue, and I don't, have any especially if I don't have any preconceived notions about it, which happens pretty often, because I got so many calls and emails about it, I now have an idea of where my district is. And so if I'm trying to decide between the two groups, which one is more representative of my district, I then go and look, wait a minute, a bunch of people called me in this one perspective and not the other. And it actually does, whether consciously or subconsciously, it does influence us. And for Congress, by the way, same thing. If you're calling our senators who represent the entire state of Georgia, and they're getting thousands of phone calls, which, by the way, you'd be surprised how little phone calls they get, but they get thousands of phone calls about one specific side of one specific issue, and they're getting meetings. But like, one side has a lot more money and infrastructure, so they're being met with more, but another side doesn't have as much infrastructure, but they're represented by those phone calls. You actually end up giving them more weight. Even if they don't have the same amount of money, even if their lobbyists aren't professionals, you're kind of bolstering their voice in that office.
What's the number needed to change your mind?
There is no number. It really does depend on each state representative. Like, for me personally, when I get emails about an issue, for me, that just prioritizes which bill we're researching for that day and week. And we're looking at the data, we're looking at the information. And so, like, I always tell people, I ask them, I was like, which bill do you think got the most emails in my inbox? The Okefenokee swamp bill.
Really?
In the 3 sessions I've been there, the one big issue that kept coming up the most in my inbox and in my voicemail was Okefenokee.
And to protect it, to make sure.
From my district. Like, because, when you send these email blasts, that's why you should always add your address. They'll include it in the signature, like, this is my address, and these were my constituents. And the thing that I got the most from my constituents specifically was about Okefenokee.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's why, like, they just cut this deal to protect Okefenokee.
I know. It's like one of the positive things that.
But that was 3 years. Phone calls, emails, lobbying, trying to get around these. Because what happened was, this bill was introduced by a Republican. It was literally signed by half the House, and she could not get a hearing for it, because the lobbyists on behalf of the mining company were just so effective about the chair that, like, chairs that committee.
I'm gonna present it from a different thing, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah.
Even though that there is big money, there are lobbyists that may be on one side of an issue. What you're telling me is that me, as Joe Q taxpayer, can still have an impact on you, my representative.
Yep.
It's wild.
It's even more if it's somebody who is a constituent that volunteered for my campaign or donated to my campaign, even if it's like $25, even if it's $5 a month, right? Like those are, because not only are you then a constituent, you're also a donor, you are politically engaged. I know you're paying attention. I know you're watching what I'm doing, but you can scale that. And I go back to the example, everyone keeps saying, Georgia's not New York City. Thank you. Yes, I know. I'm not a moron. But what's really fascinating about New York City in particular is it really was big money versus many people.
Oh, absolutely. It was corporate Democrats versus, the progressive left.
50,000 people were door knocking and making phone calls and talking to their friends and family. So suddenly those ads are only as potent as how much you trust the source. And the greatest source of an advertisement for anybody is the person that you know, right? Who is in your life. There is no greater advocate on my behalf as an elected official to a family and group of friends than somebody who's supporting me that they know personally. And so what it does is when you have because the greatest con that I think that we have been convinced of, because big money is, I don't want to dismiss how powerful big money is.
Yeah.
But the greatest con that we have all fallen for, especially in the age of social media, is that what we do doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
The issue is it just takes a long time. And it requires a longer attention span. And just because something was trending on a hashtag or a video there's a lot of work that goes into it. You have to be consistent. You have to be, somebody who shows up often, and you show up with 5 other people.
So
and you get them to bring 5 other people. Exactly.
Time on attention, discipline.
Yep.
Not losing your focus.
Yep.
Now, we might jump around here, but I hope that's okay. But I know you caught some flack apparently from this dude on the Georgia gang, who I don't like.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't like because he's MAGA.
Yeah.
And he's completely lost his mind, and he's so full of shit all the time. And he's such a caring, he makes me want to vomit.
He literally worked for a segregationist. So
yeah, he makes me want to vomit.
Bars in hell.
Right. So you and Gabe were up there in New York.
Yeah.
And working on Mamdani's behalf.
Yep. So Gabe went up because he's part of DSA, and DSA has this huge mobilization arm. Zohran's actually a friend of mine. So I've been working. Yeah. So we had gotten connected. I mean, there's not that many Muslim legislators in the country to begin with, and we all kind of trauma bond after a while. Yeah. So it's just one of those situations. So yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna fanboy right now.
Okay.
I'm like, dude. Okay. I think we were sitting here and we were joking. One of our producers was telling me, he's like, oh, Zohran. And I'm like, who? I'm like, Mamdani. Oh, yeah, I've heard that name. But this guy has captured my attention. He has my full attention at this point, because for me, he's the second coming of Obama. He has the vibe. He has the way to speak. He's smiling. He's energetic. I believe what he says. He makes me feel like he's one of the people. He's so one of the people. And I'm going to ask the question a different way now. Is that how he is in real life?
Oh, 1,000,000%. And so the way I explain it to people is why did I go to New York? And it's specifically because this was somebody who I have watched mobilize for a few years now. And this is somebody whose first gut instinct is to do the right thing, and then work backwards to figure out how to make the right thing politically and logistically feasible. We don't have a lot of people like that. We really don't. We need more people like that in politics, because I think, unfortunately, too many people, their first instinct is what is politically viable, not what is right. But the thing is, you can make what's right politically viable. The way I explain it is that polls are thermostats the further away you are from elections, and then they are thermometers the closer you are to elections, meaning you have a lot more sway on the polling further out from elections.
Okay, one more time. The thermostats.
You can change the temperature.
With the polls. Okay.
When you're further away from an election, because you're building movement, you're building support, you're messaging outside of an election cycle, versus election cycles are kind of like the final thermometer. What's your grade? Were you actually able to change the temperature? That's when polling is a lot less movable. And we see that with things like immigration, for example, where everyone just kind of thought this is the only way to think about immigration. And, that's it, not realizing there was actually a lot we could have moved on and made very different. And in the case of Zohran, he does the same thing. He says, what is actually right and beneficial to everybody? And then he works his way backwards from that. And so when he told me he was thinking about doing this last year, I actually said, I'm tired of sort of these moral victories where we just kind of, win a message or whatever, pat ourselves on the back and go home. And I think we need that discipline that I talked about and that tenacity. The expectation is that if you run, you're delusional enough to think you're going to win. Because when you run, you have to have a little bit of delusion. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. Like, you do, right? You have to believe in some kind of end goal that is going to be positive for what you're trying to do. And so when he told me yes, the running joke actually among a lot of my friends and colleagues was, has Ruwa mentioned Zoran today, right? Because once I'm in for my friends, I'm in. That's it. End of story. And so
you were talking to him when he was polling 0%.
Yeah, before anyone knew his name. Like, this was back in, we had this conversation, I want to say early fall.
I think he first came across my my psyche when I saw him yelling like a madman.
Yep.
I was like,
yeah,
fucking finally.
Yeah,
like, somebody's getting upset.
That was the first time I think he really broke through to the rest of everybody else. But I think that's who he is, right? That is the sort of, way that he's shown up for everybody. And really, like, and I'm saying this as someone who's had conversations with him when he's trying to figure out how to maneuver something. His first gut instinct is, what is the right thing to do here? And then let's figure out how to, like, work our way backwards. And we don't get a lot of that. We really don't get a lot of that. But the thing I want to stress the most about is he was outspent, whether it's PAC money or actual money.
Yeah, they came after him with everything they got.
I think over $25 million. Bloomberg alone put in $8 million. I mean, it was just, I really, really think it was the kind of psychosis that was unfortunately expected, but also kind of insane to watch. But again, you saw him from the video of him protesting, the ICE guy. People know him from the fact that he's got a really great social media game. But social media cannot manage 50,000 volunteers.
Right.
Being good looking and, like, having the nice, like you said, he's kind of like that Obama-esque, does not work if you do not know how to build infrastructure and actually strategize. Because there was strategy, right? You had to think about, what doors are you going to knock? Where are you going to start? Where are you going to end? Where are you going to spend most of your resources? How are you going to spend most of your resources? How are you going to get those resources? That kind of discipline, I think, like, being right is not enough. And I think too many people think that they get credit for being right, but being right while things get worse is never enough. And I actually think that's an abdication of our responsibility. And that's what he and his team did, is that their goal was to, like, have a professional
How big
left
was his, like, inner
operation.
circle?
I don't even know. I mean, I would argue less than 15 staff, like full-time staff.
Okay.
And then everybody else was volunteers. But they also had tiered volunteers, right? You had super volunteers, kind of like what you all do. They had super volunteers that were willing to train other canvassers. So it kind of sort of rippled out, but they needed to get to those volunteers through that messaging. So it all feeds into itself. I'm not saying the messaging isn't important. Yeah. I think they did something really great. And like you said, this is somebody that I could believe what he's saying. But the reason you could is because he, honest to God, believes it.
He's invigorated me.
Yeah.
I mean, he has been the light in this darkness, I feel. And let me get your thoughts on this. It feels like we're having this internal struggle within the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And the way I would describe the sides are, there's corporate Democrats, establishment Democrats, whatever you want to call them, those people, the Bloombergs of the world, the Cuomos of the world, I don't even know if Adams is considered a Democrat anymore, but those people of the world that will always tell you, well, that's not politically viable.
Yep.
You shouldn't talk about that.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. And then, like, those of us that are on the left, the progressive left, I would even call it, and there's a wide range, right? There, you could fall, pretty, there's a range where you have, like, super left and then, over here, but it's us versus them in my mind.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I think us versus them is a little different. I think, so growing up in the South, right? And growing up just in a place where too many people have been shut out from the process for way too long. There are a lot of people that had to do a lot of really hard work to get to where they are in terms of their sphere of influence and being able to be in those positions. I mean, it's like you kind of have to claw your way in, right? Okay. Especially with older Black Democrats, because for them, you're talking about, like, going from a place of you're not voting at all, like, you're not even legally allowed to vote, to having we have the largest legislative Black caucus in the country is actually right here in Georgia. And so there is that sort of conservatism of, what we did worked. Why are we changing it? Right? Why are you trying to, it's kind of like a change can be threatening to all of the things that you have built with literal blood, sweat, and tears. But on the flip side, the world has changed, especially because of social media, especially because of the way that information is siloed. People are looking for something different. And it's not necessarily that they, somebody was like, oh, centrist Democrats should really learn how to message like Zoran. You can't. Because the reason his message is effective is he's saying, I'm setting the bar high. Versus for a lot of people, and it's totally understandable, you want to underpromise and overdeliver. That has always, like, if you have a client and you're working in a business, you always underpromise and you always overdeliver because you don't want to disappoint them. But the thing about politics is, in order to energize people to spend hours in the hot sun door knocking for you, is you have to show them the vision of where you want to go. And the concern is, well, what if you can't do it and then you lose trust with voters? I don't think so. Because let's just say,
at least you're fighting for something.
Right. And let's just say Zoran, like, let's say as a hypothetical, right? The people who worked for Zoran, the people who like volunteered, did all of that, whether it's the rent freeze, whether it's buses, whether it's whatever, he is somebody that could message to them, that he could say, here's where we are in the process to get to these 4 things that we're working on. Here's who's in our way. Here's where it's a problem. Here's some of the bottlenecks. We never got that with President Biden, right? Even when he was doing his big legislative bill, yeah, he would message sometimes, but he never addressed the press. Like, he never went to the press room, except for once to undermine Kamala Harris. And like, that was it.
I have conflicting views, right? Yeah. Like, I have a big enough brain to hold multiple truths at the same time. Did I appreciate what he did? Absolutely. Yep. His years of service? Absolutely. The fact that he beat Trump and, that was absolutely. And at the same time, we can be critical, right? Yep. Like, there's nothing wrong with being critical. And yeah, the messaging just sucked. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
But to be clear, what kind of messaging are we talking about? I'm talking about specifically the fact that we had a president that was essentially passing FDR-style legislation without the fireside chats. Like, FDR had a lot of buy-in because he'd go on the radio regularly and just off the cuff talk about what they're working on and why it matters and why people should fight with him.
And there's like this relationship that he built.
And this was before social media. So it's like he could just tweet people back, like, thank you so much for your support. Like, this was like one way, like dictating at people, but it still was using the bully pulpit of the president effectively because it is the largest pulpit in the world. Right. And you see Trump doing this. I mean, to be clear, so many of these things, we know they're effective because Republicans are doing them. They're not afraid of primaries, right? So they have a lot more party cohesion and discipline because they have a much more active primary election season. They will like go, you know what? This is the flag we're planting and this is what we believe. And we are going to change public opinion until they believe what we do.
They don't chase public opinion. They just keep repeating the same shit over and over and over again. Yeah. And they're on message. They have discipline.
Which means that they can keep turning people out, even if they're in the minority. To be clear, the people who believe that way are still in the minority, but they're often turned out because they know I'm going to get what I'm paying for, what I'm spending time for. And last but not least is they do have a pulse on their community. And for whatever reason, we've kind of become a lot more detached. And to your point about like big money and whatever, technically, we actually outraised Republicans last year during the presidential. Right?
$1 billion.
And so, again, this is where I keep saying the many over the money, but also a disciplined many over the money, right? A many that actively shows up, especially during primaries and during the general election, that can make their voices heard. And, again, I'm the only elected Palestinian in the state. And I know like that's something a lot of people always ask me about. Last year was the hardest year of my life. When I first ran for office, I really was bullied into this. And I remember sitting down with a family friend who was like really insisting that I do this. And I said, my grandfather had passed away like 2 weeks prior. And I said, there is no way I could do Palestine advocacy. And he laughed. He's like, you're going to be a state rep. Like, it's education and healthcare and whatever. And the year I got inaugurated was the year like everything like just fell apart. Yeah. And suddenly I became that person that everybody went to on this issue that, honest to God, when I speak about it, is like pouring salt in the wound. And no matter how much I told my colleagues and no matter how much I implored them and no matter, they knew this was an issue they could just keep pressing on us with, even though, even among their younger base, is also an unpopular position to hold as it relates to Israel, right? Like, we have seen such an overton shift because for the longest time, like growing up here, people were like, how did a Palestinian get elected in Georgia? And I keep telling them, because the world isn't where it was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago on this issue. Because for the first time ever, the American public was hearing from Palestinians directly. And it wasn't that they were propagandists. These were just, a lot of people don't realize this, but people in Gaza and Palestinians in general really care about education. We have one of the highest literacy rates in the world.
Is that right?
Yeah. And a lot of us know English because that's just the sort of, a lot of people in the global south know English, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first time, Palestinians were
the Brits.
I know, right? And so
legacy from the British.
I know. Thanks. It's always the British.
It's always the fucking British, right? Like, come on.
Look, we always be the British. There's a reason Americans now like the Palestinians, okay? But you saw this massive overtone shift. And I remember, I would sit there and just beg people. I literally, and I'm not because for me, it's I want to save lives and, all of that. And I would beg people. I'm I know what you're hearing. I know the meetings you're having. And I need you to believe me when I tell you that public opinion has changed. Because what we were seeing on our screens every day, everyone had someone sharing something about this, where it'd be shrapnel with our American flag on it and the dismembered body of a child. And the president just saying the most unhinged things about it, right? I'll never forget President Biden talking about it in the perspective of which team was winning, it was a football game. And just the callousness. Mm-hmm. I will never forget, for example, this doctor was part of a group that met with him, and the doctor was trying to show him images of patients because he was in Gaza. He was part of the Doctors Without Borders. And Biden looked at him and said, I've already seen those pictures. And the guy's there's no way. These are from my phone. There's absolutely no way you saw these photos. And so the dismissive, just from the very top all the way down, the dismissive nature of that, this already existing rift in the party suddenly became a canyon. And no matter how much we tried to explain to people this was a huge problem, nobody would listen. And that's why you had Listen to Michigan start. That's why Uncommitted started, because it was specifically a primary by Democrats for Democrats to get some of these pollsters and the people in the room. Because, these people in the room are this is what the public believes. Let me show you this poll. And don't listen to any of the groups that are the heart and soul of the party. We know better, right? We know better than everybody else.
That has been
And so suddenly this gulf is it's becoming a canyon. The canyon is widening. And there are those of us that are in the party. We want you to succeed. The thing is, a lot of people saw this as, oh, you're just trying to cause problems. You're actually trying to reduce support for the president. What people don't realize is that anger was not fomented by anybody. We don't the pro-Palestine crowd does not have that much money compared to everybody else, right? There's barely anything there. Mm-hmm. And when you compare the amount of resources on both sides, this really was a deeply organic thing. And no matter, I said, this has become fodder for mis and disinformation. This has become fodder for fomenting anger and disengagement among every group, Black, white, Hispanic, Latino. And now that we have the numbers from Catalyst, we have lost ground in every group. And it's not, Palestinians, I want to be clear, I don't like being the main character. Nobody wants to be a victim of genocide, but we have always been the canary in the coal mine. And with politics, we've kind of become the equivalent of when you go on a date or go out, go meet a friend for the first time, meet an acquaintance for the first time, and you watch how they treat a waiter. To me, that's kind of what that's become, but for politics, is that how you view this issue is going to tell me so much about your politics. Because it tells me you're willing to throw people away for political expediency. Mm-hmm. It tells me, for example, that you're not willing to stand up to special interests. Mm-hmm. It tells me, for example, that...
AIPAC?
But it's... Right, you have AIPAC, DMFI, Kufi. There's so many organizations which have so much overlap with crypto, crypto and corporate money, and the right-wing billionaires. It's that same money ecosystem. And now it's the same people, by the way, that are demanding that Ken Martin completely disavow Zoran Mamdani.
That would be the death knell of the Democratic Party. Let me tell you right here. That will be the fucking death knell of the Democratic Party.
And it's and the thing is, but not just the Democrats. So the Institute for Middle East Understanding, IMEU, they were one of the few people to poll voters after the election. And what they did is they looked at the difference between Biden to Harris voters versus Biden to Trump / didn't vote voters, right? And there's top 5 issues. The Biden to Harris voters, 2% of them said Gaza matters to them. But the Biden to voters that we lost, 30% of them said Gaza was an important issue. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about independents too. Because again, independents, most voters don't actually identify in a part. Most people that vote in presidential elections aren't as plugged in as you and I. We're not going to chapter meetings. We're not plugged into every little, headline mm-hmm. that just came up. But it's called gut politics. The idea that if you're not willing to stand up for like babies in Gaza, like when Miss Rachel,
it's not a fucking controversial position.
No, and when Miss Rachel is like standing up for children, and you as a politician who has like this giant megaphone can't even reaffirm the position of maybe we shouldn't kill innocent people. Like what I'm saying is it destroys trust. It destroys trust. It destroys trust.
You know, it was so frustrating.
Oh, I know.
To try to carry water for the Biden administration and say, I don't agree with this, but and that kind of
And it sucks because to your point, we needed to stop Trump, right? Like for us, this
was
situation,
so difficult.
It was going to be worse for everybody. But the question I got over and over again was, how can I trust the Democrats to actually not screw me over? That became the question over and over and over again.
And the answer is you can't, right? Like let's be very clear. Like I don't think you could. And people would say, well, Harris is not any better, or this, that, and the other.
That's objectively also not true. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
but it opens the door for that. When I say mis and disinformation, that's exactly what I mean. It made voters so open to that kind of both sides messaging that was so deeply damaging.
I 100% agree. And so let me talk about this because I struggle. I have a ton of Muslim friends. I 100% agree with the position that we should not be supporting a right-wing Israeli government. We should not be supporting a genocide. Somebody actually posted online that this is actual Holocaust, not a genocide, because they're destroying everything. And when I was trying to talk to people during the last election, I was like, I concede everything that you're saying. I don't disagree with anything. I don't disagree with the way we're handling it and the way we don't push back on Bibi Netanyahu, any of that. And I think we should have withheld arms. I mean, there was a litany of things that we could have done. And at the end of the day, when I had to choose between Harris and Trump, it was a no-brainer. And a lot of my Muslim friends struggle with that, and they supported, Jill Stein or other people. And part of me struggles right now because I was like, I get what you're saying, but if you don't vote for Harris, you're essentially saying Trump is okay. And now that what we're seeing with people being disappeared in America is that you sold Mexicans down the river too. And there's a certain amount of anger, but I'm angry, but I understand. And I don't know where these people are anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to think about it.
Totally. And, I actually always have to remind people, so Catalyst is like the top premier, like post-election pollster, right? We lost ground with everybody.
Right.
Like this was an election that was swayed by everybody because what happened with Palestine and Gaza is it created this like pipeline of information for people that unfortunately the right exploited. And how did they do that? If you look right now, like Marjorie Taylor Greene is openly talking about how we should not be sending weapons to Israel. She's outflanking Democrats.
Know. She's Tucker Carlson.
Right. But what happens is as people share those clips, suddenly they're in this different ecosystem of information. Suddenly it's both sides are the same, which they're more likely to accept now because, most of them support this anyway, right? What it does is, and this is like my nerdy side of learning about mis and disinformation, how it works and how it functions, is you find a hook for people and you pull them down the right-wing pipeline. And this became a hook for a lot of people. And although it didn't send them like down the far right pipeline of like right-wingers and whatever, it did at least like plant the seed of both sides are the same. And suddenly it became impossible to get out of that because our side wasn't willing to differentiate itself on an issue that was like, and to be clear, none of this is rational. I try to explain to my colleagues all the time. They're like, I don't understand.
It's all emotional thinking.
I'm like, voters are not rational. Most voters are not.
Yeah, like Adam Smith had it wrong.
No, but like everyone likes to think they're rational actors, but in reality, like, no, we're not. I mean, sometimes we can be, and sometimes we can overcome a lot of that. But especially with this, I can't explain enough that for people who cared about this, every day they saw a video or multiple of the mutilated bodies of children. And we were telling them it didn't matter as much, right? Like for them, because they were making the phone calls and they were sending the emails and they were setting up the meetings. And I can personally attest to that because I was part of that. And it was like, even if people are willing to privately agree with me, and some of them were terrified to do so, they refused to shift, no matter how much data you put in front of them. Literally, like the amount of times I would explain to people, if you do this, it sends a signal that you are willing to fight for everybody. Like everyone keeps talking about the anti-trans ad that Trump did, the like Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. They actually did a study group where they asked them about that ad and said, what was your takeaway from that? Was it that like Kamala, like was it about trans people or was it about more than that? They said, no. Like, yeah, some people were like, yeah, it's about how Harris cares more about trans people than me. But generally people put in insert X group that they currently have a prejudice against as being more important than their family. It didn't matter what it was, immigrants, trans people, the rich, whatever it was that specific Kamala Harris is for they, them, whatever they, them meant to that person, Donald Trump is for you. And they leaned into it. Like, I don't think people realize how much the Trump campaign, and for us, we know better, they lied. But for people desperate for someone to like reflect what they were thinking authentically, right? The dude could just go, I remember very clearly trying to tell both the Biden campaign and the Harris campaign, here's who you should be sitting with, here's who you should be meeting with, here's where you should be going. Like,
in one ear out the other, it sounds like.
I was blacklisted from the campaign.
Well, let me kind of get into that then. You were going to speak at the DNC. I was prepared to hear you speak at the DNC. As much as you can share, what happened?
I still don't know. Like, frankly, genuinely don't know. So I didn't even have credentials for the DNC. I've had a rule not to mess with the DNC since Bernie 2016. Like, because you know this, like the DNC doesn't do anything.
No, they don't fucking do anything. it
For them, it has a specific role, right? To be an organizing arm for presidential elections only and build up resources every 4 years. And that's okay. Every organization has a scope. That is a DNC scope. So for me, it's kind of like, I don't want to be involved in this because there's a million things to do in my own state that I love and really, really want to make better. I was in Chicago for a panel with Arab American Institute. I didn't have DNC credentials. I was there for a panel in their building to talk about voices you won't hear at the DNC. And I didn't know Uncommitted had put my name in. Like, I genuinely, hand to God, did not know. I found out when Abbas was on CNN talking about the sample of names they've been giving for over 3 months, including State Representative Ruwa Romman. And suddenly I started getting phone calls of like people who know me, right? People in positions that know me going, I didn't know you were one of the speakers. Okay, let me see what I can do, right? And suddenly everyone started coalescing around one name. The one name became me. The person who didn't have credentials was supposed to go home that day, and I changed my flight and hotel like 3 times, which was impossible. And
because like it was a DNC.
Spent the night outside the DNC. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all that whole 9 yards. And to this day, we don't have a clear answer. We have heard that the Biden administration deemed me a national security threat, even though I had a secret clearance, and that having a speaker would actually threaten national security interests in the negotiations, which we know was bullshit.
I mean, give me a fucking break. Right?
I've literally been cleared by both the Trump and Biden administrations. It'll be fine. The second thing we got was that the people who paid for that stage, the big money donors, were like, no Palestinian speaker can be there. Forget me for a second, right? Because Uncommitted
it's just so that's
because
just
they suggested donors. They suggested just families that no one had ever heard of, like family members who've lost family members. They had suggested electeds. They had because there's another Palestinian state rep in Chicago. His name is Abdel Nasser. Like, he was there. Like, they had been, and to be clear, it's not like they just showed up that day and decided we want a speaker. They'd been negotiating this for months. In addition to a policy ask, this was going to be the symbolic, let's at least have something to take back to these voters. Because again, even in Michigan, the majority of uncommitted voters weren't Arab. The majority of that whole campaign, they didn't even think they were going to get delegates. In Michigan, so they actually ended up with 30 delegates at the DNC. Even though that was never a goal. They never thought that was going to happen. It's just, listen to Michigan did this thing, and suddenly states organically wanted to do it themselves. And it turned into a turnout effort to convince the Biden administration, hey, alarm bells, we want to show you with real numbers, this is real. And suddenly they had 30 delegates to work with. And so they built out this process of like, even Biden delegates could be like ceasefire delegates, right? Like, just that you affirm for a call for a ceasefire. By the end of it, we had like 500 people that signed up within 2 days that we were there. You saw buttons everywhere, like ceasefire buttons, scarves, like t-shirts. I mean, it was really clearly an organic.
It just feels like it was malpractice not to listen to you.
I mean, any of us, right? It was like, yeah, but yeah,
no, but like
a lot of us.
Even in the short time, we don't know each other very well. This is like the first time we've actually sat down and talked. But like, I think they were afraid of you. I think they were afraid of your ability to communicate a message.
But they saw the speech beforehand. Like, we know they saw the speech. No, I literally typed, because somebody was like, what were you even going to say? And I was like, well, here's it. Like, I literally typed up here's what a sample speech could look like. And that's how it got leaked. I literally wrote up a sample speech because everyone was like, well, we'd feel a lot better if we knew what you wanted to say. And then that got sent to a bunch of members of Congress that were interested in leaning in on this. And that's my speech leaked against my will. Like, I did not know this was going to get published. Like, for us, we were there to shift the party to get the voters we needed. Like, that was there was obviously another group that was like abandon Biden Harris. That was very different than the group that was actually working to get the Democrats like see reason, which is the morally correct position, the politically correct position, and a position that represented so much more about housing and healthcare and everything else about like, we really, really care about doing the right thing.
Do you think that these voters, you know, I call them Jill Stein voters, but you know, I know they could have voted for other people or stayed at home. Are they willing to come back?
So I'm assuming you're meaning like those who we lost between, the way I call them is the voters we lost between Biden 2020 and Harris 2024, right? Because Jill Stein got less this time around than any other year prior. Like, she just keeps doing worse every time. And it's because, but I really want to dig into this. A lot of people have asked about third parties. The issue is getting on the ballot is really hard. There's already limited time, energy, and resources. And so for me, if you're trying to just constantly build a third party and you're not doing any of the like, let's get volunteers on the ground, let's like mobilize people, like, viral videos does not make a movement. I cannot stress this enough, right?
They don't.
Cannot stress this enough. So they're not just Jill Stein voters. Jill Stein was just a message, but even then they were not the margin. The margin was the people that didn't show up. Right. The people that stayed home because they couldn't trust us to fight for them. And those voters keep looking for that. Like, I was actually door knocking all week that I was there for Zoran, and I spoke to an older Hispanic gentleman that was like, yeah, my wife is going to vote for Zoran because AOC endorsed him, but I think we should do Cuomo because he has the experience. And I said, that kind of experience is how we got here. And an older Black man literally runs across the street because, it's like nice, like neighborly space, because I'm wearing my Zoran tote bag. He goes, man, I told you, you got to vote for this guy. Like, any guy that's going to stand up for those babies in Gaza is going to stand up for you. And it's not like he's going to be able to like get everything he wants to get done, but he at least is going to try. That, like, we have these pollsters that keep saying, the bar is so high, we'll never meet it for these voters. There's no point in trying. And we now know that in exchange for like 3 to 5% of Republican voters, we lost 21% of our own. We literally, for every voter, the Jeff Duncan voter that everyone keeps talking about,
the Liz Cheney voter,
for every one of those, we lost 4. And I could have told them that just by the doors we were knocking. Like, to really like hone this in, we bucked national trends in my district. Not only did we not lose ground, even though the governor endorsed against me, the GOP spent $250,000 against me, we did 2 points better and had barely any drop off and actually increased turnout for Harris. We were one of the few places that saw an increase for the left than a right moving arrow.
Hearing that, it just is so frustrating, to be honest with you, because look at where the fuck we are right now. Like, God, like, this is terrible, right? Like, it's gotten way worse, way worse. It's just so frustrating, right? And what I'm hearing from you, what I've seen with Zoran, I call him Miss Mamdani, but you call him Zoran because you're on a first name basis with him. But he just tells me, just fucking go for it. Like, just fight for what you believe in. Fight unapologetically from the left. Medicare for all or universal health care should be a part of the platform going forward. Stopping a right-wing Israeli government and stopping this genocide/Holocaust should be part of, that's not fucking controversial.
Can I tell you something really interesting? There is nothing on his website about Palestine. Not one. Because it's New York City. It's about buses and picking up the trash and like streets and like what I tell people. Yeah, but to be clear, but people know where he stands because he's honest about it, right? And he, it's not like
there's not a doubt in my mind, right? Like, he's for the people. Like, of course.
It's literally nowhere on his website. If you go to Zoran's website right now and you click on his platform for New York City by New York City, it is not like, because you've seen the interviews, right? Like, of how many times they keep asking about Israel and Palestine, and all of the dudes, like, videos are like about, like, I just want to make sure your buses are fast.
The 34th Street bus. Like, I can tell you right now, he talked about the 14th Street bus, how they made it better, and the 34th Street bus.
Right, and like, when he talks about, for example, freezing the rent, and is like, this is how we do it because we've got this board. By the way, in a state like Georgia, you can't freeze the rent for a lot of reasons, but also because corporations lobbied the legislature. So even if a city said the best thing for us economically is to freeze the rent, they are legally prohibited from doing so. Like, that's what I mean when I say that these things are litmus tests. It's not that it's a test about that specific issue. It just tells me that there's this world of people that do not think the way that we do and do not care about the state of our world. And there's the rest of us. And that, like, the more you lean into this really cynical space, the less you care about that part. And seriously, go look on his. There's nothing, and it's not because he scrubbed it. And it's always been a part of his movement, and he's leaned into it.
Yeah.
And he's been there for other people, and like, he knows Mahmoud Khalil. They're friends. Like, that was a really, really hard time for him personally. That his friend was being disappeared by ICE, right? Like, that is a thing that happened. It personally touches us. Like, talking about last year and the tension of last year. I know people who've lost family members. I have family members in the West Bank. I mean, it has been like the most emotionally intense thing that I've ever dealt with, but also just like when you're a leader and you're like, there's a train that's about to fall off a cliff and I'm trying to stop the train from falling off a cliff and everyone's just insisting on pressing the gas. But you also have to remember, people want to pay their bills. People want to afford to live. People want a good and dignified life in a world where corporations want to take and extract so much more from us.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's, you know what I mean? Like, it's all so interconnected.
Now, I got to ask, like, yeah, you may be representing the House, but it would be a shame for you not to represent us in higher office. I don't know if you ever thought about that, but like, just in this short time, like, I have been filled with this hope that, like, somebody finally gets it, right? Like, somebody in power who's been elected that did better than she did last time is unafraid to just like talk plainly and unafraid to have the difficult conversation, be nuanced about it. I mean, like, you're the type of people we need in elected office. And I wonder, though, what are the hard decisions that you've had to make? Like, when is it not easy, and how do you go about deciding what to do?
Yeah, last year. I mean, genuinely, the hardest decisions I've had to make all happened in the span of a year. Remember, I was a baby legislator. It was my first term. And all of a sudden, I'm dealing with literally international issues where I had people calling me up saying, my grandmother is sheltering in the second oldest church in the world, doesn't have a bathroom. She's sleeping on the cold tile floor. She's living off of a piece of bread per day. And every day we don't know if we're going to hear from her. And they're getting shelled by the Israeli military. Like, why is no one listening to, like when I say every day, like in our group chats, it was, please keep us in your prayers. We just lost this many family members. Like, this just happened. While simultaneously understanding the political realities of a gerrymandered system, an electoral college moving world in a swing state that we won by 12,000 votes. And I'm not joking when I say there was a moment if that margin had been close enough and I had not endorsed Harris, it would have been on me personally. Like, truly, like, that was the kind of world I was living in, of like, I would call people and be like, listen, of all people I know,
right,
I just can't sit on the sidelines and take the easy way out. Like, that is not a thing I've ever been able, because everyone was like, you're a state rep, you can just like, you don't need to, like, you can hide. And I could have hid from this. I could have been a coward. I could have like never messaged a word and just been like, I'm a state rep. But I also recognize that when you're a state rep and you're the first and you're the only and all of that kind of stuff, your constituency is your district, first and foremost, the people who voted for me. And then everybody else that had somebody that was a voice for them, that wasn't a voice for anybody else. When I finally released that op-ed in the Rolling Stone, it literally was a guy who had a reporter that wanted to have an interview with me at the DNC. Again, don't have staff, never saw it until way later. And I said, I'm so sorry. Do you want this op-ed as a mea culpa before I send it here. And he said, yeah, absolutely, we'll take it. I mean, it's that kind of world but to me, it was, these are my people. We are literally sending, like the money I make, the taxes are like literally killing people that are me, right? That are me. And I'm being asked to like not fall in line, but it's Trump or Harris who, like, her own team was like so scared of their own shadow after a while that they just didn't want to, they didn't want to break from Biden, and they didn't want to like
I don't understand why they did it. Like, oh my, just say he makes mistakes.
Loyalty is tough. I know. Trust me, but that's when we talk about hard decisions, right? For me, it was, I had constituents who I knew what a Trump administration was going to do to them. And at the end of the day, I had an obligation to go, this is how I personally feel, like where literally my soul feels like it's on fire every day. And I have to do what I can to protect everyone that I know. And it sucked. And to be clear, the people who are like, you all betrayed us and like, you're the reason that we lost. And I go, I did everything in my human power, right?
Right.
And did what I thought was best and maneuvered this in a way that none of you deserve, frankly. Like, I'll be honest, like that's part of my bitterness here, is that these people never acted in good faith. And it was like, either you're with us or you're against us, and we're giving you nothing for it. But it was never about them. It was about, my constituent whose kid is trans, about my constituent who relies on federal subsidy for their medication, for those who are diabetic and for the first time could go to the pharmacy and know how much their insulin was going to cost consistently, for those whose kids were in school and all of the money that the Biden administration had sent down was actually helping them get ahead. That's who, like, I had all of that.
It is so
just tore me apart. Like, to be clear,
yeah, it's so schizophrenic, right?
Completely tore me apart. But to me, that's where real leadership comes in.
Right.
I think some people want popular leadership where you can just like have the platform and say what everyone else is already thinking and like, woo. But to me, leadership, the kind that people really lean into, is the one where you say, this is not this is not the fun position to take, but it's the one we need to take. And that's sort of where I landed. And to your point about my community was furious. My community was angry. My community was dealing with like intense heartache and intense like erasure, because nobody wanted to listen to them, while we were actively chasing the Jeff Duncan voter that doesn't exist. And because I was told by both the Biden people and the Harris people that if they could just shift the suburban, white, moderate, right-wing voter by 2%, that they were going to win this thing. And I said, those voters are not going to flip for you. The ones that are going to flip for you are the ones that are more like the independent thinkers, podcasts, independent media, like they care about this issue, but they care about other things. And, but look, for me, it was about, did I do everything in my power? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can sleep.
We're here.
I mean, you can at least look yourself in the mirror and say,
that doesn't, for me, it's like, it's not about looking, it's about the fact that like, I know I built enough trust with people that even those who are furious with me for the position that I took still listen to me today, because they will come to me and say, yeah, you weren't selling out. You were being 100% honest, and you said it when it wasn't popular. Like, you literally, like, there was actually somebody at the Zoran party that was like, hey, are you Ruwa? I was like, yeah. And she was like, actually, she's also a Muslim and Palestinian. She was like, like, you were saying the things everyone should have been saying, that every leader should have said. And they chose not to because it wasn't popular and fun and cool and whatever. And I mean, great, but there's at least that trust. Like, when people ask me, how do we win trust, whether it's with, and again, it's not, to be clear, the majority of voters that voted on Palestine were not Muslim and we're not Arab. We're too small of a population to be the majority of those voters. How do we win those back? Is we have to show them that we're listening to them and we're willing to reach higher and we're willing to make the world better for everybody, regardless of the internal beltway pressures that everybody lives under.
When I'm hearing you, I keep thinking, I'm like, yeah, fucking young people, right? Like, there's this huge demographic of people that just sit out the election because nothing changes for them, right? Or they don't see the hope, or they don't see that. Well, what is your message specifically to young people? Because we started this podcast really to try to get into this online space, right? To try to meet people where they are, at least develop this relationship over time where I don't know everything, but there's trust there that I'm not going to bullshit you. Like, what is when you talk to young people, let's say even in their district or otherwise, like, what do you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I really mean it. Showing up is 75% of the work. And it is a chicken or egg situation, right? And we saw this with Zoran, right? Like, do you show up and then you're able to then have a Zoran, or do you need to have a Zoran for them to show up? I mean, that is always going to be the tension there. It makes it easier when you have a Zoran to get the other ones to show up, but I mean, we saw the demographic charts, even the ones that they fixed, because the New York Times originally posted one that was like insane, and then they had to fix it. But even the one that they fixed, right? We had more younger people voting than boomers for the first time ever. And it was
that's like the dream, right?
And this is what I tell folks all the time. But then on the flip side, how do we like train up and recruit the Zorans of the world that are authentic? Because that's the other piece, right? There are too many people that think like they'll find their, like, kind of like how you always find the token person that is reflective of a group.
Mm-hmm.
There's now this effort among the Democratic Party to find like the token young person that like represents everything everyone hates. And it's like, why are they flopping? It's because they're everything everyone hates. And with like whole David Hogg controversy, like I think that's like a really big one. To me, I actually, as like I said, as a 2016 never mess with the DNC again person, I don't think the DNC should be messing with primaries. I don't think like democratic institutions should be messing with primaries. But I do think the visceral reaction against David Hogg was like representative of something very serious, which is such an aversion to change that even if the change is more representative of the base, we're going to do everything in our power to stop it. Right? Like because I want to be very clear here. If you're in the DNC, that should not be something you do. Like I cannot stress this enough. Like you are part of this institution. I don't want you in my primaries. And there needs to be a different perspective of how we look at primaries as a place to really hone our message, to stay sharp, and to make sure that we are constantly in touch with voters and not becoming complacent in our seats.
Let me change topics just a little bit. And we're running up on the end of the interview, so I just have a few more questions.
Go.
You've started this podcast with Josh. What was the genesis of that?
Yeah.
What have you learned from it?
Yeah.
Like, what are the maybe not so great aspects of it?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, look, to be clear, I've been doing video content for a long time. It's not good and polished, but it's at least something. And I remember me and Josh were bantering about something, right? I don't remember, like genuinely cannot tell you what it was. And I said, why don't we just record this? Like, what if we did like a weekly thing where we talked about state and local politics or state and federal politics,
mm-hmm.
and whatever, and we do one take, like we just prop the phone on a water bottle and we sit in this committee room, like
whichever one you can find. Is that how it goes?
I swear to you, like that's literally. And he was like, "Do we need to?" No, I'm like, "We're not practicing. We're not. I don't have time to edit. Like, no, it's going to be no more than 10 minutes. We're going to sit down. Whatever we want to talk about, we talk about. Whatever comes out, and it's over. Like that's it. This is not going to be an extra homework assignment. I don't have time." And it works because it's the authentic banter. That's literally how we talk about things. And so it wasn't a huge lift, right? You record it, and then the subtitles were the most annoying piece of it. But, you record this thing. I'm not joking when I say we would prop it up against the water bottle, usually mine, and just go. And then obviously post-session, we've been trying to find like a different cadence. It's been a lot harder because there isn't that same like anchor to it. And this is what I've tried to tell my colleagues is just like, just talk to people. Like, stop being scared of people. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. Yes. But they just want to hear from you. They just want to know who you are.
What are you looking most forward to in the next year?
Survival. I think we have a real opportunity to build for something really amazing next year. And I really mean this. If we're able to get if we're able to capture lightning in a bottle, we can flip the state house. We can flip the governor's mansion. But I mean it when I say, and when we started talking at the very beginning, we're going to need volunteers in all 159 counties.
Right.
What Zoran did was that he was able to have a bunch of people constantly talking about him to a bunch of other people. And they knew each other and they like recruited each other. Mm-hmm. And that's deeply, deeply powerful. If we can do that in all 159 counties, people who never used to hear from us, but they know their neighbor and they can have those hard conversations, really changes the dynamic.
Like maybe even taking over city government, local city government. And last question, and it's something that I ask all patients and families when I'm talking to them, because they're closer to the end of their life when I am talking to them, about what brings meaning into their life. What brings meaning into your life?
Actually, me and my husband were like having this like conversation about like dreams and what we want to do and like decisions, and he just goes like, what is your dream? And I said, I don't know if I have like a dream necessarily, like an end state dream, but I have a want. Like my deep want is that I want to be able to change as many people's lives for the better as humanly possible. And so anytime I pursue anything, it's usually that is like, and I know it sounds like really cliche and like, oh, of course you would say that, but it's like almost like a disease, like it's an obsession. Like I really mean it, because when whether you're an organizer, you're an elected official, you look at around you, the thing that gets to me the most, the world is the way that it is because of decisions that people make. And we can make decisions differently, and there are people choosing not to. And that drives me crazy. And I'm someone that like very much needs to fix things. And so that to me is like, if God forbid something happens to me tomorrow, I want to be able to say that I've at least done all that I could. And if I can honestly say that, I think I can rest easy.
Ruwa Romman, House Representative from District 97.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation for
Yeah.
me. I hope it's one of many that we can continue in the future, because I think you're a wealth of knowledge. You have obviously this insight into how things are in the Capitol, or under the Gold Dome rather, but you're so real. Like, you're so not full of shit. It's amazing. It just feels like you really talk authentically about what you think, because it is actually what you think. And you don't always get that from politicians. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much for being you.
This is fun.
This is fun.